From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, February the 9th, 2021. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken weighed in on several issues regarding Israel last night with CNN's Wolf Blitzer, including that he and the Biden administration recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and support a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. Blitzer asked Blinken if the administration will continue to see the Golan Heights as part of Israel.
The Golan is very important to Israel's security as long as Assad is in power in Syria, as long as Iran is present in Syria, militia groups backed by Iran, the Assad regime itself. All of these pose a significant security threat to Israel, and as a practical matter, the control of the Golan in that situation, I think, remains of real importance to Israel's security. Legal questions are something else, and over time, if the situation were to change in Syria, that's something we look at, but we are nowhere near as that.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office firmly responded to the comments, saying that the Golan Heights will remain forever a part of the State of Israel. The Secretary of State also yesterday said that the United States would be rejoining the United Nations Human Rights Council. Blinken tweeted that while the council is flawed and needs reform, walking away won't fix it. He said the best way to improve the council so it can achieve its potential is through robust and principled U.S. leadership. B'nai B'rith International tweeted that while we agree with Secretary of State Blinken that the council is flawed, to say the least, we urge the U.S., if it is to re-engage the body, to insist upon its thorough reform, noting that the UNHRC has flagrantly discriminated against Israel since its inception. And the American Jewish Committee responded, stressing that we seek a UNHRC that condemns the world's worst violators and ends historic bias against Israel, starting by removing Agenda Item 7, tall orders demanding principled, tough diplomacy. Item 7 is a permanent agenda item on the Council reserved solely for criticizing Israel. President Biden told CBS Sunday that his administration will not agree to lift sanctions on Iran until it stops enriching uranium. The American Jewish Committee thanked the president for drawing a clear line against Iran's illicit uranium enrichment. Maintaining leverage and forming a common front with allies offers tools to counter the Iranian nuclear threat, as well as its missile development and regional aggression. Israel's ambassador to the United States and to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, welcomed Biden's remarks as well, telling Israel's Channel 12, "I think it is a very, very positive sign." But Erdan added that returning to the Iran deal is a mistake. Erdan said there would be discussions on the issue over the next few weeks between the Israeli and American National Security Councils, and he said we will reach a common path forward. The goal is the same goal, to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Prime Minister Netanyahu met yesterday with Professor Nadir Arber, who leads the research on the coronavirus treatment we reported to you about last week at Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv. Arber updated the Prime Minister on the progress of EXO-CD24, the medication still undergoing trials that was used on 30 moderately to severely ill COVID patients, all of whom recovered, 29 of whom in just a few days. Netanyahu told Arber if this succeeds, it will be huge, simply huge. This is of global significance. This little thing could change the fate of humanity. Later yesterday, Netanyahu met with the Prime Minister of Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, in Jerusalem and tweeted that he spoke to the Greek premier about the Israeli COVID treatment and that Mitsotakis expressed great interest and also offered that a leading Greek hospital take part in the clinical trials in the framework of bilateral cooperation. Israel's leaders and Jewish organizations paid tribute to former U.S. Secretary of State George Shultz, who died over the weekend at the age of 100, noting how he was instrumental in helping to free Soviet Jewry and his support for Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu called Shultz a great friend of Israel, tweeting that he stood by Israel in our fight against terrorism and in countless other challenges, contributing greatly to the alliance between Israel and the United States. The leaders of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations called Shultz a staunch supporter of the Jewish state and a key ally of the Soviet Jewry movement, whose efforts greatly deepened the U.S.-Israel relationship. The American Jewish Committee wrote that the knowledge that the U.S. stood with Soviet Jews in their struggle was extraordinarily powerful, and there are few American officials who embodied that support more than George Shultz. A woman who served as a secretary in a Nazi death camp has been indicted. Prosecutors in Germany charged the now 95-year-old known as Irmgard F. with complicity in the murders of 10,000 people at the Stutthof camp in Poland. Because she was under the age of 21 when she worked at the camp, the woman will be tried in juvenile court. And in a separate case, German prosecutors charged a 100-year-old man with 3,518 counts of accessory to murder on allegations that he served as a Nazi SS guard at the Sachsenhausen concentration camp just outside Berlin. American Airlines unveiled a new direct route serving Israel, the first and only direct flight between Miami and Tel Aviv. The flight will operate 3 times a week, beginning this coming June. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Tuesday, February the 9th. At 7 o'clock, it's From the Aleph Bet, followed by Bret Stephens speaking about the BDS movement. At 8, Senator Jackie Rosen and Ariel Berman and Rachel Bresner from the ADL describe the ongoing efforts to increase Holocaust education across the country. That's from the ADL's Never Is Now Summit 2020. At 9, Mark Golub sits down with the director of the Hazamir International Jewish Teen Choir, Vivian Lazar, on L'chaim. At 10, Israeli radio host Yochai Meital talks about interfaith love from Limud, New York 2018. And coming up next, it's the ILTV's Insider. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, February the 9th, 2021. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy, stay well.